Welcome to the tutorial for the Eastergate dress. Now the first thing we're going to do is some stay stitching. So I'm going to grab all my bodice pieces, of which you should have 2 pairs of everything, 2 backs, 2 fronts for the outside of the dress and 2 backs and 2 fronts for the inside sort of lining. Okay, I'm going to stay stitch around the armholes and necklines on all of the pieces, that's both bodices, just because this is a very light silky fabric that you're using, and it's very easy to stretch things out of shape, and we want to keep this beautiful shape. So there you go. I've just done a running stitch on I've used a size 3 on my machine, so it's a 3mm length. Doesn't need to be hugely long, but you don't want it to be tiny. So now we're going to pop these bodices together. Here we go, these are the fronts. So I'm going to lay them right sides together. Quick pin. And I'm going to stitch down that centre front. And I'm going to start a centimetre in from the edge. And I'm going to stop a centimetre before the end. Just makes things a bit easier when we come to join it to the skirt. So there you go, you can see the centimetre there. And we can't see it very well on that side. Let's turn it over. There you go, the threads are in the way. So centimetre in from the top and in from the bottom. Open it up and give it a quick press. There we go, that's the front seam done. Now we're going to do the back seam. So again, same thing, right sides together. Quick pin if you need to, it's quite slippy. And then again a centimetre seam allowance as always from top to bottom unless otherwise stated in the instructions. So starting right at the top this time and zooming all the way down to the bottom. There we go. Open it out again, give it a press. Lovely. So that's our back seam. Now we're going to pop the bodice front to the bodice back. There we go. Match up the shoulders and the side seams. Right sides together. Centimetre seam allowance and stitch both your side seams and both your shoulders. There we go. Carefully does it so you don't stretch your shoulders out. Lovely. So there we are, all sewn up. We just need to press these seams open now. So all pressed. Turn it through so we can have a look, make sure it's all okay. Fabulous. So now we just need to repeat that process for the other bodice. So now we're going to do this neckline. Here we go. I've got one bodice right sides out and I've got the other bodice that I'm going to turn inside out and pop over the other one. So I've got the 2 bodices right sides together. I'm going to match up these seams first. So starting at centre back, match that seam and pop a pin in. Now the shoulder seams. This is where it's great that you've got your stay stitching in because it's just so easy to stretch and end up with a misshapen neckline at this point. That's one shoulder. Second shoulder. And now the fronts. Okay. Give that a pin. Check I haven't caught the seam allowance up, pop some pins in between now, and they should fit together really nicely. As you've got that stay stitching in there, they shouldn't be too different. I'm going to stitch all around, a centimetre in from the edge. Here we go. Now very carefully with this, I know we've speeded it up a little bit, but take your time and try not to pull anything too much. Match up your edges as accurately as you can and stick to your 1 centimetre seam allowance to give you a lovely even neckline. Now this is the centre front bit where I'm just doing a little back tack and coming off and then starting again to get that nice V shape, and also to strengthen it a little bit because it's a V, so it ends up with more than just the one row of stitching there. You've got a nice little back tack just to strengthen it a little bit. And then carry on round. Okay, so that's our neckline stitched. I'm going to clip it every 1.5 centimetres, something like that. Centimetre if it's a really tight curve. You don't need to do the centre front because you've got that lovely little space that you've left in your seam. So that will very nicely fold out when you come to turn it through. I'm not going to bother grading this seam because the fabric is so light and floaty. There we are. I'm just going to press this, and I'm pressing the seam allowance underneath and I'm pressing it towards the bodice that I'm using as the lining. So I know I've lined it in the same fabric, but I've made a decision which one, and I'm going to stitch on the edge there just to hold all that seam allowance back. Oh, got a bit stuck there. There we go. Now again, if you're going to guide this, just gently with your fingers at the front, and you can ever so gently pull at the back, but try and let it just guide through on its own, so again you don't get any distortions. There we go. Nice bit of edge stitching there. We're going to turn that through so it's to the right side, so that stitching is on the inside bodice. There we go, and then I'm going to just gently roll that over and give it a very light press. There we go, nice crisp edge. So next I'm going to stay stitch these bodices together at the armhole and round the back waist. So I need to match these seams up again and lay it flat. Take your time doing this because you want them to be able to be treated like one piece of fabric, so they really need to be flat together with no puckers. So I'm matching these seams first, and I'm starting with the armholes. There we go. So lay it out as flat as you can and make sure that neckline's laying flat and that those centre back seams are lying on top of each other. And I'm just going to whiz round here on again a sort of 3.5 stitch length just to hold them together, so when I come to put the sleeves in I can treat it as one fabric. There we go. So do that for the other armhole. I'm just skipping onto the back just for filming, but it will be much easier if you do both armholes first. Again, lay it as flat as you can. Make sure there's no fullness and no bagging, and just work your way out from that centre back. There you go. I'm having to pin that one because I didn't do it yet, but matching those seam lengths so that's nice and flat again, and then pinning in between. You'll notice that I don't normally pin anything, but I'm pinning these, so it's definitely worth pinning and taking your time over to get the best result. There we go. So I'm just going to stitch between the side seams along that back waist to hold the backs together. And again, when I put the skirt on, it will just be like one piece of fabric. Make it much simpler to pin it all together. There we go, they're coming out. So that's your stay stitching. So the reason we haven't stay stitched these front pieces is because we're going to pop some gathering threads in. Now you'll have notches at the front and at the side, so you want to make sure they match, obviously. It's between those notches that your gather threads go. So as before, pin your seams first, make sure your bodice is lying as flat as possible, smooth it all out, try and match your edges, and as you come round the curve, make sure it's super smooth and there's no pulling or bagging or bulging. And we're going to stitch, I'm going to use a 4.5 length gathering stitch here. I'm going to do one row starting at the notch, 1 centimetre from the raw edge, and then I'm going to go back and do a second row 0.5 centimetre from the raw edge, so halfway between the raw edge and the previous row of stitching. So notch to notch this goes. Here we are. So we've got stay stitching as well as gathers all in one, really. Do that for the other side as well. And then you're ready for your sleeves. So here we go. One sleeve. So you've got the notch at the top. I'll show you that a bit closer up. There we go. And then there's a single notch for the front of the sleeve, double notch for the back of the sleeve, and you've also got a couple of other notches at the top there, and these I've marked in as my between the gathers ones. They're 6 centimetres in from the side seam. Here we go. So I'm going to stitch between these 6 centimetre in notches that I put in myself, and I'm doing the same thing, one stitch line 1 centimetre in from the edge and one halfway between that and the original stitch line. So there's my gathers between my notches on my cuff, and then I'm going to stitch between these 2 notches at the top of the sleeve head. So there you go, there's one and there's the other. Again, 2 rows of stitching, so we've got our gathers in our sleeve head. Now fold it in half and we're going to sew the underarm seam. Edge to edge, centimetre in. Here we go. Okay, so we're going to just neaten this edge with some overlocking or zigzagging, and then I'm going to press that seam to one side. There we go, quick press. That's our sleeve put together. Next we're going to prep our cuffs. Nice simple way to prep them here. We've just got 2 rectangles. Obviously check your bicep measurement before you stitch them all together. Just stitching the short edges with a centimetre seam allowance, and then I'm going to press that seam open and then fold it in half and give it another press. This is a lovely simple method for making cuffs. Nice and easy. There we go, so you need 2 of those. Okay, so let's pop these cuffs onto the sleeve. Here's my sleeve, here's my cuff. I've just stay stitched them together, as you can see, so it's again a bit easier to pin it and you won't get any pulling. Here we go. So slip your cuff over your sleeve, match your seams up, and I'm going to sort of find the halfway mark of my cuff and of my sleeve just so that my gathers are evenly distributed between the two halves. You've got that little flat bit without the gather threads in as well, so that's the half there. So that bit I'm going to match to the cuff, fold that in half as well between the seam. There we go. So I know that's where they need to be pinned. So like I say, you've got that little flat bit under your arm that won't have gathers in, and then you want to pull up ever so carefully your gather threads between your notches. There we go. Until it fits neatly inside the cuff. So your cuff and your sleeve should be the same length. That's about the same length. So now you just need to distribute your gathers how you wish. I'm going to just try and evenly distribute mine between the notches and the pins. There we go. I shall be giving them a little twiddle as I sew. Okay, so from inside the sleeve, start stitching from your seams, your underarm seams. Centimetre seam allowance again, and you should be sort of stitching over that gather thread line. Don't worry if you're not quite, or if you miss it in places, you can always take them out afterwards if they show. But it's nice if you can get directly on top of it. There we go, that's one cuff. There you go, and you can see it's flat under the arm and then all the gathers are around the outside. Finish off your seam, nice bit of overlocking there, and I'll probably give that a little steam. Okay, let's put these sleeves in. So there's our bodice, all stay stitched together, and just check your notches so that you know which sleeve you're putting into which armhole. So that's my right on there. That's it, pin under the arms. Match those seams first. Then I'm going to turn it through and work from the inside. So let's find these notches. Okay, there's one, and there should be a corresponding one on your armhole for where your gathering threads start and finish. So I'm finding those. That's that one, and then on the back sleeve, there we go. So pinning those in place, and then I'm going to pin my underarms. Try not to stretch anything. That's my back of my sleeve and my armhole, and then I'm going to gently pull up these threads until the sleeve matches the armhole. So it should, there we go, look, they're the same length. And again, just distribute them how you wish. I'm going to try and do them quite evenly between those 2 points. Let's pop a pin in there, missed that one. And then I'm going to stitch a centimetre in again, all the way around. So from the inside of your armhole and inside of your sleeve, start stitching from the underarm seam and carefully ease that sleeve in as you go. There we go, one sleeve in. Take those pins out, and I'm going to finish this edge again with the overlocker. You can use a zigzag stitch, turn it through and have a look. Pick out these loose threads. Beautiful. I'm going to give that a little steam, I think. So there we go, both sleeves in, looking very nice. Job done. So next on the list is the skirt side seams. So I've got my 2 skirt pieces. This is the front with the little bit there. 2 skirt pieces right sides together. You can see, look, there's a notch there and a notch here on the front skirt. They're the notches that you do your gathers between, as before. But we're going to just whiz down the side seams first. So a couple of pins in. And then I'm going to stitch down the sides, centimetre seam allowance as usual. Off we go. There we are. Just need a neaten. That's it, nicely overlocked. I'll give those a press. And then we're ready to move on to our gathers. Beautiful side seams. So we're going to pop some gather stitches in the top of this skirt now. We'll start with the front skirt with a little V bit. And there's that notch. We're going to start there with our gathers. We're not going right into the V, and we're going to stop there. So stitch in between the 2 notches. Same as before, longer stitch, 1 row a centimetre in, second row half a centimetre in. That's our 2 rows. So there you can see you've got that little flat piece there. Then the gathers, then a little flat piece. We're going to do the same on the other side. There we go, matching gathers. So next, the back seam. We're going to start from the side seam and go all the way along to the other side seam. But first I'm going to pop a little notch in the centre back so that I know where to match my centre back skirt to my centre back bodice seam. There we go. So I've put my gathers in there, again 1 centimetre and half a centimetre from the edge. I've got my back notch. I'm ready to go. Okay, let's put this skirt onto this bodice. So you're going to need a tape measure for this and your booklet with your measurements. You're going to measure between these 2 notches, because for this size that I'm making, which is a 16, I need these gathers to be gathered up to 13.5 centimetres. Whatever size you're making for will be a different measurement, so consult your booklet, your instructions, and check which measurement is appropriate for the size you're making. And you want to gather between those notches to that length. And again, take your time and get it as accurate as you can. It will all make a difference in the end. So 13.5, and I'm going to even these gathers out a little bit. Great. And then you want to do the same for the other side. You might also wish to sew those loose ends in so that you don't end up ungathering. There we go. Another 13.5 there. Give it a little wiggle. Perfect. So that's the first job. Then you need your skirt and you need your V section at the top. So right sides together. This is where that little space in your bodice comes in, that 1 centimetre. So that opens up to allow you to get into this V. So you want to be a centimetre in and a centimetre in on that V, and that's where you put your pin. That's where you start sewing. And then you want to match up your side seams. And then you can pull up the gathers on the skirt to match the bodice. Just popping a pin in there. So between those notches, you're gathering the skirt so that it's the same length as the bodice. So again, ever so gently. Perfect. Now pop some pins in. You can distribute the gathers as you wish. I've kind of just done them evenly throughout. So we've got that lovely flat piece at where the V is, and then there are gathers to accommodate your bust. And then you want to stitch from that V down to the side seam. I'm doing this in sections because it's I think it's easier just to break it down like that, so you can concentrate on one part at a time and get that perfect. So from the front out to the side seam, stitching over those gathering threads. Again, you can pull them out if they show, but if you can stitch over them, if you've stitched them accurately, you should be able to stitch on top of them, and then you don't have to do any unpicking. Okay, so that's one side done. Take those pins out. That's nice, no tucks or puckers. Let's have a little look from the right side. Make sure it looks all right. Yeah, you can see those gathers are all in the same place. So you want to repeat that for the other front. Now we're going to do the back. So that was all the front that's been done. Now I'm going to find that centre back notch, find the centre back seam of my bodice, pin them together, and simply pull up the gathering threads so that the skirt fits the bodice. There we go, get those two the same length, and then again you can distribute those gathers how you wish. I'm sort of tapering mine out to the side. Don't want too many gathers in the side. I prefer them to be around the back. And stitch your centimetre seam allowance from seam to seam again. So here we go, we're going to back tack, going over the side seam, stitching over that gather thread again, all the way around to the other side seam. So that's your skirt attached to your bodice. Just need to neaten that edge now. So I'm going to pop it under the overlocker. I'm going to come on and come off where that point is at the front so that I get a nice point. That looks good. Turn it through, have a look, check it's all okay. Lovely. And I'm going to give that a little bit of steam just to settle those gathers down. So we're nearly there. All we've got to do now is the hem. So I'm just going to overlock mine, turn it up and stitch it because it's nice and quick. You can do a turn and turn hem if you choose to, that's absolutely fine. There we go. Just needs a bit of a press. There we go. So what you should have now is something that looks a little bit like this. Enjoy.